London Guardian, you name it. I mean, they are saying we are Nazis, we are fascists. They are saying, yes, it's eugenics. They are just flaunting it, I guess, to change the Overton window, to be so extreme that the sky is in the limit and somehow break our will. I believe it's backfiring on them, but we are doing the search terms today: prison cities, eco-fascist, and prisonplanet.com. Eco-cities is #1 search. Eco-fascist, #2 search. Prisonplanet.com, #3 search. Please make them all #1, #2, #3. Let's smash the enemy. You will decide which one is #1 by how many times you put it into Google and then hit re-enter over and over again. But they are really coming out with the world government, with just all of it. Is it because alternative media has checkmated them or brought them into check, exposing their agenda, and so stonewalling doesn't work? Or is it just simply to psychologically overwhelm us with the flaunting, and it's all delivered in a gibbering, giggling way by these psychopathic people engaged in this public orgy as they prepare for a mass bloodthirsty feast? Alan Watt, what is your take on them going into warp drive, or do you agree they're going into warp drive?
Oh, they are, but it's on plan as part of the agenda. They go by an educational timetable, and they go by 5-year plans for children who'll be 5 now, 10 in a few years, and how they're going to perceive their new world. They're getting ready for it now. They're training them for it now to be quite normal. And so this is just the educational part. It's time to implement this stage of the agenda. They know exactly how much to push, of course, because they've already prepared us all for the present agenda, and we accept it. We're always prepared in advance for everything that comes along, mainly through little bits and bytes of information from scientific expos on the media, and we also get it through all fiction. All fiction has it in it now, the coming system you have to live into. And for 30 years now, sci-fi has been pouring out this dystopic future with a small group elite running the world, a scientific elite, of course, always a scientific elite who are in charge of all food rationing and so on, who live a very good life, by the way. And then there's the masses, who are still working for them in their closed cities where they're dependent upon their masters for everything as long as they toe the line.
And China actually has those closed cities for their worker drones who are even locked in their neighborhoods at night. Meanwhile, the globalists are doing everything they can to shut off the resources while telling us that it's naturally happening, but then we have all their own manuals admitting it. Please continue.
Yeah, and it's all done by stages where they introduce new crisis. There's crisis after crisis. And you think about life before 9/11 happened, it was fairly static to an extent, and no major changes, drastic changes, are not necessarily not a whole bunch of them all at once. And since 9/11, it's been crisis after crisis after crisis, and this is the technique of a revolution. It's their revolution, not ours. And they're bringing the last phase into being. And this phase, of course, will last up to about the year 2050 or so, as they drastically reduce the population, again, through food rationing. But this is not new, because the United Nations was set up, really, to help coordinate all of this. You need a massive...
Well, the British 200 years ago developed the reservation concentration camp model, and then it was used on the Native Americans. And then we have the British manuals that are in the Library of Congress, how to give them the smallpox blankets, how to open the wounds of the soldiers onto it.
Malthus put out lots of instruction booklets, educational booklets for the British Empire, how to run their colonies, how to keep peasants at a working level, but not too bright, too strong to walk off at night or run away. And so they had the whole diet scheme figured out. That's why diet is very important to it, and that's why rationing is coming in to help us get to that stage. Strong enough to be kind of pliable and workable, but not too smart enough to do anything about it. And this is all part of it, too. So that was introduced into the British Commonwealth.
That's right. They have manuals on how omnivores are less aggressive when they're mainly on the vegetarian diet, but that were designed and triggered under especially a red meat diet with the hormonal endocrine interfaces to become more predatory and aggressive. They don't want that for us. They want us docile, grass-eating creatures for them to more easily roll over us.
Oh, yeah, and they talked, when Britain went to India, they talked an awful lot with the Brahmins, very interested in their culture, because the Brahmins had kept that very system working in India for thousands of years. And so the people were taught a religion. They've made them vegetarian, and you can also restrict, of course, even what you give them for a vegetarian, which makes them even more pliable and not too bright. It's down to a perfect science. They know everything that you need to eat to keep you bright and healthy and so on.
Well, that's right. The anthropology and archaeology and biology shows that the brain, CC-wise, begins to grow even larger with even just a few generations on a red meat diet because it has the fats and oils needed for brain development.
Well, the British soldiers in World War I, they were never fed properly before they became soldiers. They came from all walks of life, generally the industrial towns and cities where meat was pretty expensive, very expensive, and very scarce for them. And within the first, the average recruit was 5'3", by the way, at the age of 16, 17, 18. And within 3 months of getting a high protein and meat diet, he would sprout between 3 and 6 inches. And that's how starved they were. So all this had been tested out on populations before, including Britain. Yeah.
And they had to give them meat, though, to get them ready to kill, because the Germans were gobbling meat and understood that. It's all scientific. So right now, they're really rushing all this out. It's been accelerating since the staged event of 9/11, but in the last year, it's like they put the afterburners on. I mean, they are just out in mainline news saying, we're going to kill you at 65. They're not even denying death panels now. They're saying, we're going to kill you. I mean, we are murderers. They are saying, we are murderers.
Yeah, you've had write-ups in the British papers. Again, Britain is the flagship for the world to follow, remember. And they're talking about putting up euthanasia booths at street corners, very much like you saw in Soylent Green, where you just get rolled in. Here's some classical
Or music. Children of Men. They're getting us all ready for the suicide.
Oh, yeah. And so, it's a scientific dictatorship. This was all promoted by Bertrand Russell, who helped set up the system we're living through now. He was a big promoter. He attended all the think tanks, put forward lots of ideas, along with Aldous Huxley and his brother Julian Huxley from the United Nations UNESCO. And they had it all planned out for this phase that we're going through now, how the society would be turned into a society where there'd be very little marriage at all, massive promiscuity, but very little births. And that was what was to be encouraged. Of course, they've done that. They've been successful with all of that. And everyone's divided now. No one's got a family to stand up for them anymore. So government is the boss. And so now they can just rampage ahead with all the rest.
That's right. That's why the Romans had to build that wall in central England, because they could never conquer the Scots, the only group that they could never conquer, because they were so family tribal oriented, kind of like Afghans. They would die before they did it. But now the Scots have been brought to heel quite nicely.
Oh, yeah. Again, through their diets. They were ruled by London for a few hundred years, still are. And again, too, we've got to understand that the basic premise as well from all of this is how they pick the leaders of countries and those who are the politicians, who are still lower level, but they're higher level than we'll generally see. Scotland's a very Masonic country. You couldn't get a job in Scotland that would pay you any kind of money unless you were a Freemason. And it's the same thing in this system, too. The higher Freemasons are picked out at university level, especially Ivy League. And if you're an operative Mason, that means that you must attend every meeting when you're called. That could be 3 in the morning, whenever, to show you're very eager. And that's how they pick the future prime ministers, etc., and politicians, the ones who will get up and be an operative Mason, do what they're told, never ask why, and never ask the consequences of their actions.
Yeah, all the modern presidents, prime ministers, MI5, MI6, CIA, Sarkozy in France, all of them, Vladimir Putin, they're just all secret society agents.
Yes, and they must prove their worth, and that's the whole case with it. They've got to be eager, they've got to show that they can go to parties and not get too drunk. They must not be loose-lipped, because they're monitored more than anyone else. You see, the system is based in a more on the Soviet system and a hyper-Soviet system. They've announced in the declassified records of Russia that there was so many dossiers on all the bureaucrats working for the Soviet system, way more than the average person, the pro at the bottom, because they had to make sure that those are the ones, just like George Orwell showed you in 1984, those are the ones who must be gung-ho and always put on the good face for the party, believe in the party, that kind of thing. And their telephone calls, everything was monitored.
Stay there. We've had a bomb go off. We told you the feds were getting ready to start detonating those all over. I will be right back.
Freedom is just another word for nothing left.
So, the naked body scanners go in, 9,000 locations, getting telescreens at Walmart and malls with Janet Napolitano and government messages about spying on your neighbors. The last 6 years, they've trained local police in every county and city that domestic non-Al-Qaeda will start blowing up the courthouses everywhere. And magically it happens. And I was watching Body of Lies with Russell Crowe and Leonardo DiCaprio this morning while I was jogging on the treadmill. And it was all about in the near future, Muslims blowing up soft targets. So the answer is, they've said, shopping malls, streets, checkpoints. Notice the government's like, we're getting ready. And then in every case, it's linked to the government directly. They're like, never mind about that. We're taking over right as the depression comes in, right as the implosion comes in. And here's the news. We'll get Alan Watt's take on it in real time here. That's how I knew they were going to blow up the World Trade Center months before. They were getting everybody ready and saying, when the attack comes, give your rights up. It's like a Jim Jones Kool-Aid drinking drill. Bomb squad at building near State House after mailroom employee injured. State FBI officials, not servants, officials, called the scene. Second explosion reported at Hanover office. So we got it in Baltimore and Annapolis. Correct, guys? The Maryland State House mailroom employee was injured Thursday afternoon while handling a package. An incident was being investigated by bomb squad, according to Annapolis city officials. Annapolis Fire Department's bomb squad was investigating the incident, and the state's bomb squad and FBI officials were on their way to the Jeffrey building on St. Francis Street, where the incident took place. Again, this is just now breaking. Continuing, fire crews, hazmat sent to MDOT, I guess Maryland Department of Transportation, Jeffrey building. Officials are investigating possible explosions at the Maryland Department of Transportation headquarters in Hanover and the state government building in Annapolis. Now the feds have tried 6-7 times the last few months to get Hispanic, black, white prison converts to Islam, converted by feds, to blow up Christmas trees and things. And even the mainstream media has called it setups, entrapment, but they're out there finding mentally ill morons. In a matter of days, I could find a homeless schizophrenic and get them to blow something up, hypothetically, if I wanted to. I mean, it's not hard. Give them whiskey and drugs and money. They'll do it. It's the same old story. But obviously that wasn't working enough. So they may have gotten an actual lunatic to do this, or they may have done it themselves. Let's get Alan Watt's take on all of this as it unfolds. We do have a man arrested in Maryland terror bomb plot. This was back in the 8th of December. Here's another one. Lawyer, FBI entrapped Baltimore bomb plot suspect. No way Antonio Martinez could have assembled the phony bomb intended to blow up recruitment centers. So we got a major operation already going in Maryland. Alan Watt, what's your take on this situation?
You're quite right. They can find whoever they want. And in fact, right after 9/11, the BBC had the top guy on from MI5 who was saying that if they keep putting up sites and putting up their own agents there to entice youngsters into these sites to carry out bombs for sting operations, they'll end up creating an actual organization, Al-Qaeda, which did not exist before.
Yeah, just like they can get kids to join the military and have their heads shaved and be brainwashed, the government posing with recruiters can recruit people to radical Islam.
Absolutely, too. And most of them are actually sting operations, and they supply the fake bombs. They get a bunch of youngsters there who've watched too many video games, and they're in on the plot, and they get caught red-handed with the goods, and they're arrested. So, see, if you're going to change the world into a war scenario, and this is the whole thing since 9/11,